Hello, welcome everyone. This is ModX Network Voices. My name's Ryan Smith from Washington State University. I'm joined by my partner, Ivan Rupnik. Ivan, like to say hello?
Hi, Ryan. Hi, everybody.
We'd like to welcome a guest today, an expert that we'd like to have on the show, Justin Stewart. Justin is CEO and of Synergy Construction, Synergy Inc. And there's also a company he runs, Synergy Modular. He'll talk a little bit about what he does there. Justin is located in Seattle, does work in the West Coast, and has a lot of experience with modular. So we're excited, Ivan and I, to ask him a few questions about how is it different? How is development and construction different using modular today? And we'll discuss that. But first off, Justin, please introduce yourself and welcome to ModX.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Ivan. Good to see you guys, and very happy to be here. I really appreciate you having me on here and helping get the word out on everything in modular, and really appreciate all the work you guys do in all the research and getting honest information out to everybody so people can keep advancing the industry. So really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm Justin Stewart, CEO of Synergy Inc. and Synergy Modular, and then we also have a attainable housing development arm, workforce development, that utilizes modular construction on the development side. The 30-second background, we're a 30-plus year commercial general contractor, headquartered out of the Seattle region. We have offices also in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Austin, Texas, and do work throughout the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, Texas, and the surrounding states as requested by clients. So yeah, we're kind of expanding in that geographic region, and modular construction is one of the main drivers behind that. We got heavily into advanced offsite construction methods and volumetric modular construction about 6-7 years ago, and a very, very deep dive approach into research, procedures, processes, lessons learned before we ever attempted our first project about 5 years ago. And from there, we rewrote our entire procedures manual and started a separate company that only does advanced offsite construction methods and volumetric modular construction called Synergy Modular. And so here we are.
That's really great, Justin. And, someone who's cut their teeth and has gone down this path and done the learning, and the fact that you're open and willing to share with others says a lot about your company. So, and yourself, we really appreciate you doing this today. We just have a few questions we're going to work through and try to unpack for the audience. Ivan, take it away.
Thanks, Ryan, and thanks, Justin. Actually, yeah, remember speaking to you with passion about some of these topics back in Seattle before the world turned upside down. And so I was happy to continue that conversation. And you're very clear about your experience and your frustrations as a developer prior to experience with modular, and the way that things have changed with not just with modular as a construction system, but with really the kind of management structure, procurement, really the entire sort of approach to development that you very eloquently described as change. In a way, modulars enable things that you wanted to do before, but didn't feel like conventional construction supported. So can you tell us, a little bit about, development before and after? How is development with modular different?
Absolutely. And yeah, what I was speaking on last time we were having that conversation was that with a clean slate focus on advanced offsite construction methods and volumetric modular construction, it really spotlighted the need to get designs complete, get procurement complete, bring the team together early, which were all the things that would really be better in site-built construction as well. But the industry has pushed back and pushed back and pushed back as permitting timelines have gotten longer, as the way the financial modeling works it just necessitated later and later design, later and later procurement, and all things that are causing issues on all construction projects, and really wreak havoc on anything with advanced offsite construction methods. And from just a contractor's perspective, to do a volumetric modular construction project well, all of that needs to be done before you ever step foot on the site. So one of the biggest differences that changed our procedures and processes was having all of what is known as the traditional project management of the project done before we break ground. So we're able to work hand in hand collaboratively with the offsite supplier and the design team to have complete designs in one Revit model, go through, get the full project under contract with a fixed cost, fixed schedule months before we break ground, because we've removed all the uncertainties. Because before we break ground, not only do we need to have the modular supplier and us working collaboratively for months along with the design team, but we need all of our other subcontractors on board as well. The building is a cohesive system, and the parts that are built on site and the parts that are built off site have to work together. So by moving all of that forward, we're able to bring all of our sub-trades on board under contract. So the traditional buyout process, which is usually happening at the front end of a project, we're moving before the project, doing the submittals before the project, because on a typical construction project, submittals generate up to 80% of the given RFIs on a job. And RFIs change things. And if we're already under construction in an offsite facility, each one of those means a small renovation project once it hits the site. And that's exactly the problems we want to avoid and have been successful in avoiding by changing the process considerably. So if you can just picture moving all of that to before the actual construction works even starts, that's what facilitates successful modular construction projects. And your question was back on development, so we can get into that in a second, but I think that was a lot of the conversation we were having.
Good memory. And sorry, and just to follow up, just to play a little bit tough love for modular. So what you're describing sounds great. It sounds like what we need to do. On the other hand, it takes away some of the flexibility that developers and even architects have had in the past and contractors have had in the past. It also means that it's a little harder to, well, that's from the industry side, it's a little harder to have bids at a certain phase, because you really need to have that relationship built often with one modular manufacturer. So just a little bit more, like, what are you losing and what are you gaining, maybe? if there's a way to think about it that way.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and so what you just described is a little bit of that older process of, come up with a design, then you'll get bids, and then you build it. And the industry as a whole has been somewhat moving away from that in general, because there are a lot of benefits to the other way, which is, let's form teams and work with a more integrated delivery process and collaboratively make sure that the design is the most efficient for what the end result is. If you take that to the next level, and this is where I think the development process really can benefit. If there's a huge benefit to the development process, it's taking that to the next level and focusing on why you're building the building in the first place. And if that purpose is multifamily housing, okay, then you're focusing on a place for people to live. If that purpose is a hotel, you're focused on that. If that purpose is student housing, that is your end purpose, and focusing on why you're building it in the first place. By doing that, you're going to design floor plans that people want to live in. You're going to design spaces people want to be in. You make no compromise. These are the best layouts, the dimensions people want for furniture layouts, the style of kitchens that national property management firms can tell you that residents request, most energy efficient, best sound performance. You really just design the space that people want to live in first. Then you take that and aggregate those together into an overall building. Then you've created a community of spaces people want to live in, rather than the current development model, which is come up with a massing based on height, setbacks, density, and then try to divide it up into units, in which you always are, it's the whole thing is an effort and compromise, right? It's trying to squeeze as many net rentable square feet as you can into a project while chopping that up into livable units. And if there's a huge benefit here, and again, can speak from all of the experience on the contractor side, by optimizing those units at the front end and aggregating those into a building, you cut out so much cost out of the building that the net rentable square feet that you're bound to lose in not coming up with funky inside corners and chopping things up, where it more than makes up for it. And we've run this model multiple times, that you're able to bring housing to the market much more cost effectively in a time frame that is half. Then you scale that into repeatability. Now you've cut down your front end entitlement costs, your pre-dev, your soft costs for design and engineering, all getting smaller. Your hard costs, I can say, go down when you use this method. Your ongoing management and maintenance costs will go down. And then you've just shortened your entire cost stack. And if you take this approach from the very beginning and don't overpay for the land, you're likely able to bring something to market that's going to rent in a range that is lower than your competition. And from our side of things, our goal is to use this model to actually deliver attainable housing, which people are not able to do right now in traditional methods.
And that should be the goal. And that should be the altruistic goals. We need more housing in this country. Yeah, absolutely. So the way you talk about it, and I've heard you talk about it, Justin, over the years, that's very compelling, and it logically makes a lot of sense. What do you think is missing? What is missing in the modular delivery method that needs to be proven out to increase the uptake? Why aren't other developers, contractors running to this method that you described?
There are a couple things, but I'll start with this. Most development projects get off track on day one, step one, the initial proforma. Development projects start with a proforma based on residual land value, and it's tying back into what I was just saying. They go and they have a massing study options, well, first a code study to figure out what they can build, but then massing study options to figure out how many net rentable square feet they can get. That massing study is based on a 3D shape that hasn't even been divided up into units yet. Then they go get a market study to tell them how much those will rent for, and they start by determining maximum revenue. And then they work backwards from there with all the costs I just described: the pre-dev and entitlement costs, the soft costs for design and engineering, the hard costs, the ongoing management and maintenance costs. Then they put in the investor returns, and you've come up with residual land value. The investor returns that are factored into that initial proforma, the best building that's built out there is only going to cash on cash return, say 7%. Investors aren't investing in multifamily real estate deals to get 7%. They're investing in them to get a much higher IRR. And the way the industry works, that IRR is delivered through proving that it rents higher than your initial proforma and being able to refinance or sell. And when you do a refinance, you're able to pull cash out, distribute to investors. Therefore, upping their internal rate of return over that time period. That's created an industry that is constantly pushing rent up. There's no other way for the economic model to work. What we have identified is a way to use the capitalistic ingenuity of the market to reverse the pressure and have pressures that's now able to compete on bringing costs down and therefore bringing higher quality units to market in a more cost efficient manner. So if you take step one and focus on optimized living units, and then figure out how to get those to the market in the most cost-effective manner, you're doing what has happened already in the retail world. You're doing what has happened already in a lot of manufacturing industries.
And what used to happen in housing. It used to happen in all the neighborhoods that we love to live in American cities and in most European cities were parceled with typologies in mind until the 1940s, right? And that's actually, I just wanted to bring this up because I've been thinking about it for a long time, but that was a public service in still very much a capitalist environment where there was an idea that it actually enabled developers to be able to play because it made for reasonable sizes of land based on what was available in terms of credit. And it was also a way to make sure that housing had a higher quality without getting in the way of the market, right? So it's actually common sense. It turns out there's some good things that we can repeat that we aren't repeating. Sorry to jump in, but it's a really frustrating thing to see us repeating mistakes when your point really, there is a reason why we used to do this.
Absolutely. And somewhere along the way, we got away from that most cost-efficient model in the name of just market studies and rent studies
and speculation on opportunities on agricultural land that wasn't parceled. And that the Germans even have a word for this. I'm not going to bore everyone with this, but this is a thing. This is part of city building that really you're describing again. It's funny because Justin, we've seen this a big company, a big startup that we can't name. We had the chance to view one of their first factories, and they had the same experience you described. And I wish more people share that experience, which was as developers, they were slicing up land, whatever shape it was, to get every square foot. Once they got into manufacturing, they realized, not because of the manufacturing process, but because of the data, the feedback loops that manufacturing requires, that they were actually losing money where they thought they were being smart, where they thought they were making money. And to your point, which we're seeing, we interviewed a Swedish developer, same story, even simpler terms, in the time it took them to develop 3 buildings in their old way, they got 4 buildings because they got they got a few less square feet on that one lot, but they got 25% more units over their year, which is more money at the end of the day. Anyway, sorry, it's
more
really,
housing.
More
housing for the people that need it. Yeah. But this is, I think, the thing that we'd love to get to crack the nut on. I think what's missing to the last question is you understand this. We have anecdotal evidence. We don't have the value proposition worked out. There's still a belief, and it's a false belief, in the idea that if you can slice up an oddly shaped site into the most square footage, that makes the most economic sense. And no one, unfortunately, cares about the user or the quality of the units. But even from an economic point of view, with modular, it doesn't pencil out.
And what we're doing right now is proving that wrong. So, and it's what has to happen, right? People need to see it to believe it, unfortunately, because really, until you believe it, you're not going to see it. Is the way that things actually work in this world. But going to that model, what we're proving out is by focusing on optimized living units and optimized floor plans, you also are therefore standardizing, which that is the key that unlocks manufacturing efficiency. Think about how expensive a Toyota Camry would be if you wanted to change the dimensions, the couple inches here and a couple inches there for each person that wanted to get into that Camry. Yeah, those would be $1 million cars driving around rather than Toyota being able to produce a higher, and they'd be lower quality because you'd have more mistakes.
Right.
Instead of Toyota being able to produce a much higher quality car at a much lower cost because they optimized it and therefore standardized it. And we're not talking about standardized buildings here. We're talking about floor plans that people want to live in. And it's really the programmatic process that most large-scale multifamily developers want to be doing in the first place.
Yep.
They have standards. They have interior finish packages. They have floor plans they really like. But each site, when they get into it, they customize them. And while a given building...
To the site, right? And to the project.
Yeah, it's to the site. It's to the actual construction conditions that are being built on site. You know, tolerances on site built construction are not what they are in manufacturing. So, you know, if you have a 200 unit apartment building, say it was site built construction, 200 units, and every unit was the same, your cabinet supplier is still going to come in there and measure the framing on all 200 units.
Because they can't.
Because they're all 200 of them are going to be different.
Right.
And they're still going to be shimming and adding fillers. That's just an example. You take off-site construction where your tolerances can be much tighter. They're much tighter in wood. You go into steel off-site construction and they are down to as tight as you want them to be. Now you, with optimized floor plans and optimized units, you are able to create a repeatability that is both better for the program, but is a much more cost-effective way of delivering housing.
Justin, you've been very fair to criticize your own discipline development. Can you maybe, as a closing comment, also say, you know, you're a great advocate for modular. What should modular be doing? What should modular manufacturers be doing to work with developers like yourself? What aren't they doing that need to be doing to work in this way? Where
to start? Because there is a lot that the industry could be doing better.
Top three.
Hey, this is a business principle. If you want to be successful in any business, you need to understand your client's success. And in the modular industry, that should be where the focus is understanding the client's success. So that means financing. That means working with developers on their programs, optimizing those living units, and then working collaboratively, because right now there isn't a big enough supply chain to deliver volumetric modular construction or advanced offsite construction in all the places where we need it. So as we're building that supply chain, and it's building quickly, everybody that's in the industry needs to work together collaboratively. There really aren't competitors here. We're people that are advancing the industry, bringing housing to market more efficiently, bringing commercial construction to the market more efficiently. And we all need to be working together to come up with standards that people don't feel like they're reinventing the wheel. Simplify and get more information out about the permitting process and inspection process, because it really is pretty simple once people learn about it. But right now, there isn't one source of information that really jurisdictions having authority can go to. Each one feels like their neck's on a chopping block the first time they do a volumetric modular project, because they're going outside of their norms and approving something that they haven't done before.
Right.
So there are a lot of things the industry can do. I think, speaking on what we were just talking about, the industry is heading towards productization and being able to use those products, those optimized living units, to aggregate them together into buildings. And that will be a significant change in the development process that brings a lot of efficiency. It will also help with the financing challenges. You know, the financing challenge, we haven't even spoken on that in this time, and we don't have a lot of time to do it. We've been working with groups to solve that also, and really simplify that. But that's been one of the biggest roadblocks for volumetric modular construction in the first place. The regulation of the major financial institutions, they have to lend with specific ratios, and volumetric modular construction just doesn't fit within those ratios. So right now you're relying on local community banks and specialized lending products to make it happen. So that's another hurdle that the whole industry can tackle and solve. It's one we identified early, and we've been working on tackling it, but the whole industry really needs to. But yeah, I mean, if we're wrapping up, I think it's really just the optimized living units, looking at, let's create places people want to live and bring those to market most cost effectively. Let's not be beholden to an initial massing study and market study that tells us top line revenue and work backwards to residual land value. That process is killing our development cycle, and it's killing attainable housing in this country.
Thank you, Justin. And to close this out, if you could just maybe summarize by saying, what does Synergy do, and how can people partner with you moving forward to realize modular housing?
Absolutely, and I appreciate the opportunity for a plug. Yeah, so we are an end-to-end partner on development projects. We're happy to joint venture. We're happy to work with landowners and do the entire development side. But we're also a turnkey general contractor that works in a strictly general contractor format, first and foremost, with developers that can take them through the process with total transparency, end to end, and deliver higher quality housing in half the time at a fixed cost. When we start with, we created feasibility packages because taking that first step into using advanced offsite construction methods, there's not a clear first step on how to do that. And while we know what the steps are, and other industry veterans know what the steps are, widely we recognized everybody was asking the same questions. So we teamed up with some industry experts and have created feasibility packages where if people have a site and they want to know what they can build most efficiently, we can work with licensed, experienced architects to get full code studies, full optimized living unit massing studies done, 3D box layouts, full cost estimates, full pre-development plans, and full construction schedules that they get in a full bound package backed by the best companies in the industry that they can take to any lender, any equity providers, and say, this is what we can build. We know how much it's going to cost. We know when it's going to be done. And in a time in which labor shortages are driving costs up, there's tremendous value in that.
Thank you, Justin Stewart, for joining us today on ModX Network Voices. And we hope you'll come back and that we'll have another conversation, and best of luck to you and your enterprise. Appreciate you joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it and love the conversation, and I'll definitely be back.
Great. Thanks.